Communion Sunday started with a heart of a church saying that communion, as special as it is, I don't think I'm on, Will, as special as it is for all people. So I want you to think about your experiences with communion. Now, some of you were raised with actually a loaf of bread. Now, I don't have a big loaf, but how many of you remember that you always had a loaf of bread that was broken? Nobody, huh? I remember that, where they would actually take the loaf. In fact, quite often when the United Methodists gather in big places, they have loaves of bread, and they break them and you go to your station. Remember, Donna? You see where you usually sit there? I had to change my look. You know, they break it and you break off a piece, right?
I don't remember that.
Well, let me say it. Greg remembers, yeah. Other places in communion, and I remember as I grew up and we got more concerned about sanity and the appropriateness of it, is that then all of a sudden here we cut up the pieces of it. We have a big loaf of bread made for us every week by Linda Benish. She brings it, and Kathy dutifully cuts it all up into little pieces so you don't have to just take one square, right? And you dip it in a cup. Some places you take a big chunk in the Greek Orthodox of bread, you break off a piece, and then you drink from the cup. I think some of you have had those experiences. I'm not on? It's not you, it's me? How about that? Am I on now? Whoa. I'm on now. Thank you. I am so grateful. I'm going to do an aside, Mike. I am so grateful that you are here, because with your presence, it makes it better. You are doing some really neat things to help us enhance our worship. So thank you. He did a last minute, what do you call it, end call about what we were going to do for the children's story, because I didn't do that and have it planned. They had something else. So anyways, back to communion. When I was a kid, I remember these little teeny little squares that were like little saltine crackers. Anybody remember those? I mean, you could hardly get them picked up. And then we had these teeny little cups. Did anybody ever have the little cups, and in the back of the pew you had the little holes, so you had to do that? So you all had your individual cups and your own little pieces, right? And you know, if you were a kid, you thought, oh, there's nothing there. Or like, what is this about? Then I also know that as I grew up, we got into those wafers. Anybody have a wafer stick to the roof of their mouth?
Wafer. Oh, yeah.
I'm not making fun of any of this, because the point that I'm trying to make to you is there anything in the scriptures that you heard today that tells you how you have to do communion? All of those different means, including the way that this church traditionally does it, which is what I inherited when I came, is that they shared the bread and the cup together, and initially you did it around the altar. Quite often, when the group was small, we just all gathered around and we passed it to one another. So it doesn't matter, because that's not what the scriptures are talking about. So often we look at the scriptures and then we hear what we have become tradition of seeing, right? We read right into them. And the piece that I wanted to take you to is the Corinthian text. In the Corinthian text, and quite often in the Corinthian text, I have seen it used as what I call a baseball bat over your head. Did you hear the Corinthian text? Well, you probably heard the first part but didn't pay much attention, but you definitely heard the part where it says, and those of you who are unworthy, don't take communion, because if you do, you're going to go to hell, right? Well, that's not really what it said, but it says if you take of it unworthily, Paul says, then that's why you're sick. That's why you're having problems. And so often I would get that piece, so I would be afraid to take communion, because I'd be going through this checklist. Some people do it every week. Catholics do it every time they meet. Some people do it quarterly. We do it monthly. Doesn't matter. When when you do it. But when I would go through it, I'd go, Lord, did I ask you to forgive everything? Did I do that? Is there any heart malice in my life? Am I alone, or do you do that sometimes too? Especially when you hear that Corinthian text, you think, I'm not worthy. Am I worthy? I don't want God to punish me or make me sick or create judgment. That is not what that text said. But when we take that one verse or the two together, we all of a sudden hear that, don't we? But if you take it in the full breath, which Bruce read to you, I had you read it from the beginning. In the beginning, we have Paul talking to the church, and he starts out by saying, I'm having some problems with you because you are tearing the church apart because you're arguing. Right? You're coming to church and you're fighting about your differences. Now, did Paul say that one unity church would be that everybody would agree on everything? That's not what it said either, did it? It said, of course you're going to have differences. That's what makes the body of Christ. And out of those differences, God can be glorified because He reveals the truth out of our struggles. Did you hear that? Because that's what it said. And he says, then, because of these differences, some of the things I'm seeing you do, I'm going to tell you about the rest later when I come, but the one thing that I really want to get straight is this issue of the Lord's Supper. So I'm going to tell you what I know that the Lord has revealed to me, which in reality has been handed down by the apostles that Paul had direct contact with, is that it was a meal to remember who Jesus was and what He came for. That He took the bread and He broke it and He gave thanks to God and He said, this is my body. That He took the cup and He blessed it. The fruit of the vine is the exact translation. So it doesn't say it has to be alcoholic or non-alcoholic. It doesn't matter. The fruit of the vine, He blessed it and He said, take, drink, because this is the new covenant. This is the forgiveness of sins. God has